miracle is often denoted as an event attributed to divine intervention. It is beyond human nature. It is supernatural. We have many events that are of the supernatural right here in the Mount Canaan Baptist Church. Journey with us through miracles in Canaan.
Identified shooter hit the front of the YMCA in at least 2 different spots. The first one just off the left side of that pillar over there in the glass. The second one just off the left side of this second pillar. That's the shot that ended up piercing the glass and hitting the teenager in the head.
My name is Ternae Jordan, Jr. October 27th, I remember it was a Wednesday night. Every Wednesday my sister and I took piano lessons at this local YMCA in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And that night was just a normal night, taking lessons. We took those lessons, we waited on my mother to pick us up from those lessons, and we sat and we just waited on them.
They've always done what we've asked them to do. I said, sit on the couch and wait for me to pick you up. After piano practice was over, we went and we sat in the lobby on the couch that my parents told us to wait on whenever we finished piano lessons. And I remember sitting there waiting on my mom to pick us up, and we were looking out of the window and some kids started arguing.
There were 2 gang members. They were fighting inside of the YMCA, and they went outside. They locked the doors behind them. And as me and my sister waited, they began to fight, and they pulled out guns. They started shooting at one another, bullets just flying through the air.
The thing I remember is 2 gunshots ringing out, and I remember jumping up and I ran to the left where other kids were. And when I turned around, TJ wasn't behind me, and so I yelled for TJ and he didn't move, so I ran back to go get him. And as I grabbed his arm, another shot rang out, and he turned around to look at me.
And then gunshots. My sister was telling me to move. As soon as I turned my head to look at her and about to get up, the bullet came through the window and shot me. It struck me in the head. And all I remember is getting real hot. I didn't know I was shot at first until this one guy was saying that I was shot in the head. And I remember crying, falling on my knees and praying and crying, telling God not to take my life now. Everything would start moving in slow motion. It's kind of like the movie The Matrix. Everything was moving in slow motion. There was a loud ring in my right ear. It was just loud. My head started vibrating as if like you hit a metal bat up against a building, and it vibrated. My head just started vibrating so rapidly, and my whole body got hot. It was a feeling that I'll never forget.
He wasn't moving, and I couldn't figure out why he wasn't moving. And I remember a guy yelling, that boy got shot in the head. And those were his exact words, that boy got shot in the head. And I didn't realize they were talking about TJ at the time until I looked at him, and he reached up and grabbed his head, and then blood just started running down his hand. And I remember him saying, oh my God, I don't want to die.
I was laying on the ground, and I remember crying. It was a man holding me, and I was saying, I'm about to die, I'm about to die, I'm about to die. And I kept saying that. And he said, you're not going to die, just keep praying. And I kept praying and praying, and he said, keep praying, keep praying. And that's the last thing I actually remember as far as that situation.
Headed to the YMCA to pick up TJ and Dewan. I was 12 years old. I was scared. I had never been in a situation like that before. I didn't know what really was going on. And I remember them asking me for my parents' phone number, and I couldn't remember anything but the church number. I couldn't remember my father's cell phone number. I couldn't remember the house phone number, but I remembered the church number, and I remember giving them the number to the church for them to call my dad.
There was a phone call that came in I remember the young lady who went to the phone, answered the phone, and then she came back with this stunned look on her face. I asked her the question, who was it? She said that I wish they would stop playing on the phone. I said, what did they say? She said, they just said, TJ, your son has just been shot. Well, that was confusing because I knew he was at piano lessons. But then she said something else that I realized it was possible. She said, I heard your daughter, Dewan, screaming in the background. And it was at that time that the whole Bible class ran out of that building and ran around to the YMCA.
When we arrived, we saw ambulances all over the place, familiar faces. We even saw church members. And at that moment, I said, something has happened. So I got out the car, I ran towards the YMCA, and there were two young ladies walking towards us, and I asked them, what's going on? But they did not respond, so I continued to run towards YMCA, and I saw a lot of our church members, and I knew then something has happened.
I never will forget that scene. When I jumped out of my car and ran toward the front door of the YMCA, there was yellow ribbon everywhere. There were fire trucks and ambulances there. And I remember running through that yellow tape and into the lobby of the YMCA. And the scene that I saw, my son laying there with a bullet in his head, I shall always remember that.
My dad came, he was the first to arrive that I knew. And once he came to the YMCA, I remember him standing over TJ saying, TJ, this is your dad. And there was no response, but I thought I heard a gasp of breath. They picked him up and they put him on the gurney and they rolled him out to the ambulance. And it was about that time that his mother pulled up and she ran up to me and said,
I said, what's wrong? What's wrong? He says, TJ has been shot. At that moment, everything in my body left me.
The next question she asked was, where? And I said, in the head.
I remember the first time that I was able to actually go in to see TJ in the ICU, which was the next day after the shooting. And I remember going in and he was in the little ICU room and it was a nurse, and I remember it was another nurse on the side of the bed. And as I walked in, I remember just seeing all these tubes going in his head, through his nose and his arms. It was just tubes everywhere, and it was machines.
Tubes all down his throat, tubes in his nose, his head bandaged.
He was bandaged all up, his head was bandaged all up. And I remember as I entered the ICU room, he started to go into a seizure, and the nurses ran in and had to rush us out immediately. And that was very scary for me.
Early the next morning, the word had gotten around. It had struck the AP wires and had spread it throughout the state and across the country. And the hospital was receiving so many calls that they came to me and said, Pastor Jordan, there are so many people from across the country and throughout the state and this city that want to talk to you. We want to know, would you be willing to do a press conference? We can set it up in the chapel and all of them can interview you at the same time. I told them that we could do it about 3 o'clock. Angela and I went home and we showered and we discussed possibly what our stance would be on the shooting of our son. And we came back, and when we got back to the hospital, we were completely blown away. Every local station, along with their transmission stations, were there. There were interviewers and newspapers from Indianapolis and throughout the state. And it was at that time that we went into the chapel and gave our statements.
Last night, tragically, it hit his own family. 15-year-old Ternae Jordan Jr. in critical but stable condition at this hour.
I just take this as an opportunity. My wife and I have had the opportunity to discuss it, to share. And we don't know what God's will is, but we did not pray, at least I didn't pray, that the Lord would save my son. I prayed that the Lord's will be done. Basically, we have experienced a miracle. I understand that last night when we brought him in, I was discouraged because his vital signs were dropping, and he got to the emergency room, and everybody was very concerned. They were concerned about his eyesight because the bullet did enter from the right side, and his pupils were not dilating. My philosophy is and has always been, and has not changed at all, that every time violence takes place in our community, there are two victims. The victim that is involved in the altercation and the person who is the victim of the altercation. And we still hold true to that. We hold no bitterness. As a matter of fact, we're not bitter, we're blessed. So we want to say to this community that the fight is not over. The fight is just beginning. And I don't know what the future holds, but maybe the Lord wants to use Ternae Jordan Jr. as an instrument to make a difference in this community. And we feel like Abraham today. We feel like him who had to offer his son Isaac. God wanted to know, did he love him just that much? But we want God to know, and we want this community to know that we love God enough that if he wants to use our son as an example to reach others, we're willing.
And also remember, Ternae coming to get me, taking me to the trauma unit. When I got there, TJ was there with his eyes closed. He wasn't moving, he wasn't talking. And I remember taking his hand and saying to him, follow Jesus. Follow Jesus.
Couldn't see much, but I heard voices. I heard people talking to me. I knew people was there. I knew my loved ones were there. And I remember my mother saying to me, TJ, go with Jesus. She was touching my hand, she was holding my hand, rubbing my hand, and she said, just go with God. And one of the things I'll never forget was this white light. It was a bright, white light that came and it shone in my face. And walking towards the light were two men. One man was a taller man, and he had his arm around a shorter guy. And they were just walking towards the light. I never realized who it was, never figured out who those two men were. But in my spirit, I truly believe that it was Jesus with his arm around my uncle, walking towards the light. In other words, letting me know that he's okay and that I'm gonna be okay. And that vision has stuck with me ever since.
He's not out of the woods yet, but he's showing signs of improvement. He's able to write us a note telling us that he wanted to lay on his side yesterday, so that greatly encouraged us because it lets us know that his eyesight is coming back.
I remember the moment when they said, TJ, we're about to take you home. They put me in the wheelchair. I had some new clothes they put on me. And my family was there. And they pushed me out of that room. They had cameras in my face. They were interviewing me. And a lot of kids will be excited because the TV crew is there. But the only thing I really wanted was a Happy Value meal. And I got it. And I had my family. I had my Happy Value meal. I had my family. And I had my life. And I couldn't ask for anything else.
2 weeks and 2 days after the shooting, Ternae Jordan Jr. went home.
And watch television, eat some extra value meals, and have fun.
God has blessed me so much that sometimes I forget. But he always gives me like this little throb right where the bullet went in, right behind the back of my eye. And I believe that's a reminder to say, son, don't forget. Don't get too caught up. Don't forget, I saved you for a reason. And you need to let the world know. So really, I just want the world to see this. I want the world to hear his testimony. I know God is a miracle worker. I know God is good. And from that point and that day, I told God, I promised God, I would give him 110%. From the community, from churches, different denominations, different races, everybody from different backgrounds was able to experience this miracle and see God work. People were saved by this. My mother received a letter from a woman that said by her faith, she was an atheist, did not believe in Jesus, did not believe in God, but by her faith and seeing my family go through this, she gave her life to Christ, and now she's working in ministry for the rest of her life. That's another miracle that happened within the miracle.